Walk into any church, anywhere in the world, and you see them. Frozen in plaster, eyes cast down, hands folded in gentle prayer. We've been trained to look at these statues and see passivity. We see people who were too holy for the real world, too soft for the grit and grime of actual history. But that image? It is a lie. It is a sanitized, safe, and frankly boring version of a reality that was violent, complex, and incredibly dangerous. What if I told you that the people on those pedestals weren't just lighting candles? They were commanding armies. They were orchestrating political coups. They were staring down tyrants and literally setting cities on fire. These aren't stories of quiet contemplation. These are the stories of how faith became the most disruptive force in human history. Today, we are smashing the plaster. We are looking at 5 saints who didn't just pray for the world to change, they grabbed the world by the throat and forced it to. Let's drop you right into the mud. It's 1429. The 100 Years' War. This isn't just a skirmish. It is a generational trauma. England and France have been butchering each other for nearly a century. France is not just losing. France is erasing itself. The English control Paris. They control the north. The French heir, Charles, is hiding in the south, broke, paralyzed by indecision, and basically waiting to die. The city of Orléans is under siege. If Orléans falls, the map of Europe changes forever. France ceases to exist as a sovereign power. And into this apocalypse walks a teenager, Joan. She is 17 years old. She is illiterate. She has never held a sword. She has no money, no title, no military training. But she has something scarier. She has a voice in her head. She claims God is speaking to her, telling her that she, a peasant girl from nowhere, is the only thing standing between France and total annihilation. Now, pause. Imagine the sheer absurdity of this moment. A war room full of hardened generals, men who have spent their lives in blood and steel, listening to a farm girl tell them how to do their jobs. They should have laughed her out of the room, but they didn't, because Joan didn't just have faith. She had a terrifying, electric conviction. She convinced the desperate Dauphin to give her a suit of armor and a horse. When she arrives at Orléans, the energy shifts physically. The soldiers, who had been waiting to die, suddenly feel invincible. But Joan isn't there to be a mascot. She is there to fight. On May 4th, the commanders try to launch a sneak attack without her. She wakes up, realizes what's happening, and furious, she rides straight into the fray. She doesn't stand in the back. She leads the charge. And then, the moment that should have ended it. During an assault on an English fort, an arrow slams into her. It pierces her armor, sinking deep between her neck and shoulder. The English cheer. The Witch of Orléans is down. The morale of the French army starts to collapse. But then, Joan does the impossible. She doesn't call for a medic. She doesn't ask to be carried off the field. She pulls the arrow out of her own flesh. She gets patched up, climbs back on her horse, and rides back to the front line. The sight of her, covered in her own blood but still screaming for victory, breaks the English army's mind. They aren't fighting a girl anymore. They are fighting something supernatural. 9 days. That's all it took. She broke a siege that had dragged on for months. She didn't stop there. She dragged the army deep into enemy territory to Reims, forcing the coronation of Charles VII. She crowned a king. She saved a nation. And she did it all before she was legally an adult. But power doesn't always look like a sword. Sometimes, it looks like a letter. Enter Catherine of Siena, 14th century Italy. A world without armies for her to command, but a world that was spiritually rotting. This is the era of the Avignon papacy. For 70 years, the popes, the successors of St. Peter, had abandoned Rome. They were living in Avignon, France, effectively functioning as puppets for the French king. Rome was a ruin. The church was a bureaucracy of corruption. Catherine was a nobody. She wasn't a nun. She was a laywoman, one of 25 children. Uneducated, and for a long time, illiterate. She had to dictate her thoughts to scribes. But her thoughts were nuclear. She looked at the most powerful man in the world, Pope Gregory XI, and she decided he needed a lecture. She travels to Avignon. Picture the contrast. The papal court is dripping in gold, decadence, and political intrigue, and in walks this small Italian woman wearing rough clothes, who refuses to be intimidated. She starts writing him letters, and she doesn't use polite, diplomatic language. She calls him Babo, Daddy. It sounds sweet, but the context is brutal. She tells him to stop being a coward. She writes, "Be a man, courageously." She tells him that by hiding in France, he is poisoning the church. She argues that his fear is a sin. This is diplomatic suicide. You do not talk to the Pope like this. But Catherine had a moral authority that terrified powerful men. She essentially bullied the Pope into doing the right thing. Because of her relentless pressure, Gregory XI packs his bags. In 1377, he moves the papacy back to Rome. She ended a 70-year geopolitical standoff, not with a treaty, but with the sheer force of her conscience. Now, let's jump forward to the 16th century, to a man who had everything to lose. Thomas More. He is the Lord Chancellor of England, the highest office in the land. He is rich, he is famous, he is the king's best friend. The king is Henry VIII. You know this story. Henry wants a son. His wife can't give him one. He wants a new wife, Anne Boleyn. The Pope says no. So Henry decides to change the rules of the universe. He declares himself the head of the Church of England. He effectively nationalizes God. To make this stick, he demands an oath. Every subject must swear that Henry is the supreme head of the church. Thomas More sees this for what it is, a tyrant rewriting reality to suit his libido and his ego. More knows the law. He knows that if he speaks out, he dies. So he tries to stay silent. He resigns his office. He retreats to his home. He tries to disappear, but silence is deafening when it comes from a man like More. His refusal to swear the oath screams louder than any protest. The king drags him to the Tower of London, a damp, dark stone cell. For months, they pressure him. Just sign the paper, Thomas. Just say the words. You don't even have to mean them. But More understands something we often forget. Words bind you to reality. To swear a lie is to fracture your soul. At his trial, it takes a lie to kill him. Richard Rich, a man seeking a promotion, commits perjury, claiming More denied the king's title out loud. The jury takes 15 minutes to condemn him. As he stands on the scaffold, staring at the axe that will sever his head from his body, he delivers one of the most savage mic drops in history. He says he dies, the king's good servant, but God's first. He drew a line in the sand between the state and the conscience, and he paid for it with his blood. But if you think saints are always the victims, you haven't met Olga of Kiev. 10th century. Eastern Europe. This is Game of Thrones, but real. Olga is the wife of Prince Igor. The Drevlian tribe murders Igor in a brutal display of defiance. They tear him apart. Literally. Olga is left alone with a 3-year-old son. The Drevlians look at this grieving widow and see an easy target. They send 20 of their best men to Kiev with a proposal. "Marry our prince. Let us take over your kingdom." Olga smiles. She welcomes them. She tells them to return the next day in their boat, to be carried to her palace as a mark of honor. The next morning, the Drevlians sit in their boat, chest puffed out, being carried by Olga's soldiers. But they aren't being carried to a feast. Olga had ordered a massive trench dug in the courtyard. The soldiers dump the boat, men and all, into the pit. Olga walks to the edge, looks down at them, and asks if the honor is to their liking. Then she buries them alive. She's just getting started. She sends a message to the Drevlians. "Send better men." They do. She invites them to a bathhouse to wash up after their journey. Once they are inside, she bars the doors. She sets the building on fire. She burns them all to death. She then travels to the place where her husband was murdered to hold a funeral feast. She gets the Drevlians drunk, dead drunk. Then she signals her soldiers. They slaughter 5,000 men in a single night. Finally, she lays siege to their capital. The city won't break. So she offers a truce. She says, "I don't want your money. Just give me 3 pigeons and 3 sparrows from every house." The people are relieved. A small price for peace. They catch the birds and give them to Olga. That night, Olga's soldiers tie pieces of sulfur-soaked cloth to the birds' feet and set them on fire. They release the birds. Instinctively, the birds fly home, to their nests, in the eaves of the wooden houses. Instantly, the entire city erupts in flames. It is brutal. It is terrifying. But here is the twist. This woman, this avenger, eventually travels to Constantinople. she encounters Christianity. And something in her breaks, or maybe something in her heals. She converts. She takes the name Helena. She returns to Kiev not as a destroyer, but as an evangelist. She plants the seeds that would eventually lead to the conversion of the entire Russian Empire. From mass murderer to saint. That is the range we are talking about. And finally, we have a king, Saint Louis IX of France. 13th century. He is the most powerful monarch in Europe. He has the gold, the armies, the castle. But if you stripped him naked, you would find the truth. Underneath the royal velvet, Louis wore a hair shirt. Rough, scratching animal hair, constantly irritating his skin. A constant physical reminder that he was not a god, but a servant. Louis didn't just rule, he served. He hated the corruption of the legal system. So he would go to the woods of Vincennes, sit under an oak tree, and tell his people, "Come to me, anyone." Peasant, merchant, noble, could approach the King of France and ask for justice. And he gave it to them. He banned trial by combat because he realized that strength doesn't equal truth. He built hospitals. He fed the poor with his own hands. He was a warrior, yes. He led crusades. He was captured, ransomed, and suffered in the heat of the Middle East. But his greatest conquest was his own ego. He showed the world that absolute power doesn't have to corrupt absolutely, if that power is submitted to a higher authority. So look at the statues again. Don't see the plaster. See the blood of the battlefield at Orléans. See the ink on the letters that scolded a pope. See the axe falling on Thomas More's neck. See the burning birds of Kiev. See the hair shirt under the king's robe. These people didn't use their faith to escape the world. They used it as fuel to change it. They remind us that holiness isn't about being nice. It's about being brave. It's about engaging with the messy, dangerous reality of your time and refusing to back down. So here is the question for you. Which of these stories shocked you the most? Was it the Avenger Olga or the warrior Joan? Or is there another saint whose real story has been lost to history? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more deep dives into the history you were never taught, hit that subscribe button. We're just getting started.